Hey guys, and welcome back to the Kane Audio vlog. Apologies, it's been a couple of weeks, but it is now Friday and it's time for another Ask Me Anything. House admin, before we get started, apologies for having not uploaded. I was on holiday. If you saw the last video, then you'll know that. And I was on a 3,000-mile road trip around most of Europe, and I had planned on recording an AMA while I was out there, thinking I would probably get some spare time, but I didn't. And also we got hit by the flash floods and storms in France while we were camping, which was a bit not too much fun, but yeah, but had an adventure and an amazing holiday. Usual rules apply. Ask me anything in the comments below this video and I'll get back to you next week with the answers. So I'm going to look at the comments on the video from last time. And starting from the start, we've got Zombo. Do you consider yourself a music producer with a mixing side job, or a mixing engineer who likes to make music? Sorry if I confused you. Good question. I guess I probably, when people ask me what I do, I think I probably say music producer first. But that's maybe because more people know what a music producer is, and yeah, so don't know. I guess in reality, yeah, that's a hard question. It shouldn't be hard. I guess I'm a music producer first. No, do you know what? I think I'm all three: music producer, audio engineer and sound designer. And I think I probably split up my time about equally between those three things. So I guess it depends on who I'm talking to as to what my answer is. If I'm talking to someone from the industry, then I'll say all three. If it's a random stranger, I tend to just go with music producer, because if I say audio engineer, then they don't have a clue what that is, and then they tend to ask more questions, and I'm not very good at conversation with strangers. So yeah, hopefully that answers it. Deadly Custard, Canon, high five. Following on from your live set talk, have you seen Stephan Bodzin's setup? He's had his own controller made, looks pretty cool. It's great to hear and see the Moog being used live. It really brings some life to the performance. I could imagine you doing similar thing for sure. Would you ever worry about the Moog conking out through though mid-performance? Anything like that ever happen to you? So yeah, I was talking last time about live sets and things. Yes, I've seen Bodzin's setup, and yes, it looks awesome and sounds awesome. Interestingly, the setup I'm looking at creating is probably going to be very similar, but I don't want it to be, because I don't want people to sort of go, oh, you're just copying Bodzin. So I'm trying to make it a bit different, but there's a few ideas, but we'll see. Do I ever worry about the Moog conking out? Not really. I mean, if you're doing a live show, you should hopefully have backups. Also, I come from an age of the industry where, you know, I started mixing on vinyl, for example, and, you know, I remember going to see people like Sasha and Digweed and people like that in clubs. And, you know, Sasha, who was and probably still is one of the greatest mix artists ever, every now and then he'd screw up and the crowd would cheer, and that was part of just being live. You know, I guess it's similar to if you go see a good rock band, every now and then, you know, a guitar string might twang or break altogether, or, you know, so I think that's part and parcel, and I think you have to accept that as an artist. If you're going to be performing live, you need to accept that there's a good chance things can go wrong, but you need to recognise that that's kind of part of the show, really, and for a lot of people that's part of the fun of it. As for anything like that happened to me before, yeah, I've had a lot of hairy moments when I was doing laptop sets, and I think it was the last video I explained. I had it was a couple of iPads, MIDI controller as a mixer. I had the NI machine triggering various percussion stuff. I think I had a little keyboard. I have a few bits and pieces. Anyway, it was a a table full of equipment for my live show, and there would be times where you're rushing to get set up, and then you've sort of queued everything up in your headphones ready to take over from the DJ before you, and all of a sudden your laptop doesn't have any output, or something like that. There's been a few sort of last minute resets, and of course when you reset that much equipment, you have to because again, this is going back 10 years or so I was using MIDI via USB, but also MIDI via Wi-Fi, the OSC commands, because I had Touch Lemur, and there were a couple of other bits. I think I had MIDI USB coming out of the laptop to a MIDI 5-pin DIN splitter, because there was an issue with something to do with that. And mid-show, your USB being USB, it does conk out every now and then. So there were a few sort of hairy moments, but again, it's kind of part of the live show. And I think once you've done 10, 15, 20 shows with that setup, then you start really getting into it, and you kind of prepared for what could go wrong and what might go wrong. So it's not too much of an issue. You're always going to be nervous, especially someone of my disposition. You're always going to be a bit anxious that something's going to fail miserably, but to be honest, I'm usually more anxious of me failing in keeping the crowd happy rather than my equipment screwing up, because I think being a bit of an audio geek, you tend to kind of know where the equipment is and what it's doing anyway. So yeah, there we go. Outsider, hi Dom, fairly new to the series, welcome. I've only watched the last 3 so far. Canon, high five. Just wanted to say, enjoy your hard-earned break. Thank you very much, I did. Also, I've been helping a friend rebuild his house. We built his cabin from the ground up. Even just the price of the concrete we poured into the foundation made my jaw drop to my feet. So my only good advice is shop around and keep your options open. That is some good advice. So this is talking about my garden studio that I'm looking at building. The garden that I've got is on a slight slope, so what I'm probably looking at doing, again, I think I probably said this in the last video, I was supposed to have a guy come over that week. I need to rebook that. I'm looking at either, so if you imagine the garden sloping like that, you've got your 2 options. Either you dig the top bit down and flatten it off and then put in your concrete foundations, or stilt or raise your lower half. I think I'm looking at, for cost options and kind of environmental, probably putting stilts on the lower half, so if I drop concrete pillars into the ground, so I don't need to cover the entire ground with concrete and pour it all in. What I'd be better off doing is getting, say, 3 concrete pillars at the base, and then you can bolt on treated timber framing as your foundation underneath that. So that's what I'm looking at the moment, but again, I've got to get a guy round to tell me whether that's even doable or not. But yeah, good advice, cheers. Rod Marconi, hi Dom, many thanks for the AMA. Canon, high five. Can you give a brief outline on the differences between a remix, bootleg, edit, original mix, rework, etc.? PS, enjoy your holidays. Thank you, I did. Different people use different terms for sometimes the same thing. So I can only speak on my perspective. For me, a remix should be more of a paid job. So, you know, a label will approach you saying, can you do this remix? What's your fee? And you say $1 million, and they laugh in your face. And you're given the stems, the parts, the MIDI, whatever it is, by the original artist, and you're given free rein to make your version in whatever your sound is. That's really what a remix should be, is that you're approached by the artist or label and asked to do a remix, and you're essentially creating, well, for me, when I do a remix, you know, I kind of try and make sure that people get their money's worth, so they're not just getting a rehash of the same thing. You know, the number of times I get, say, a promo through or something, and you know, you've got 10 remixes and they all sound the same, it's all the same style of music, it's all doing the same thing, it's got the same melody, blah blah blah. I sort of, for me personally, I would rather re-instrument everything, so I don't really want the audio unless there's a few tricky bits of audio in there, or a focus point is, say, a drum fill or something, then, you know, I might take that and tweak it. But I prefer to get the MIDI, and I'll usually re-instrument it and also re-notate some of it as well. I might change key, I might change, you know, a major to a minor or something like that, so that it changes the musicality of the track, and it needs to be very different, I think, to be a remix. A bootleg, for me, I don't think I've ever made what I would call a bootleg. A bootleg should be essentially 2 tracks mashed together in a mashup, but not necessarily just dumped on top of each other, or maybe an, you know, illegal remix, I suppose, would be a bootleg, where you're sort of adding your own bits, I suppose. Edit is kind of the same but less work, I suppose. So for me, you know, some of the Mau5trap artists, like Black Gummy, No Manner, I've sort of re-edited their tracks for my own private use in gigs. You know, maybe their version has a 30-second intro of just synths, which is, for me, not ideal for mixing, so I might add another minute on, with some drums and bits and pieces, so it sort of flows better in my set. I suppose that's an edit, really. Original mix is just your original production. A rework for me is, so for example, I did one recently for a festival, Mori Kante Yeke Yeke. I think it's on my SoundCloud page. For me, that was a rework because it was maybe kind of a bootleg, but I'd sort of kept it as original as I possibly can, while adding in a few extra layers and a few bits and pieces. It, you know, it's just literally a reworking, a revision of the original, because the original came out whenever it was in the 90s. You know, so the bass wasn't quite up to scratch, and the hi-hats didn't quite have enough attack for me, so I'd sort of tweaked some extra sort of hi-hats on top and bits and pieces. Yeah, so that was a rework, and that was that. Yeah. Cavok, comment from episode 13, from memory, as it seems to have disappeared now. Really weird. Okay, yeah, that is weird. I don't know if comments are disappearing, and please let me know if they are, because they shouldn't be, unless YouTube marks them as spam if they've got links or something. I don't know. My question's related to your garden studio. Firstly, how will you approach the soundproofing, which you did touch on in this episode? So I haven't really come to a final conclusion on soundproofing. However, what I will say is we need to be clear, or I need to be clear in the building process, the difference between soundproofing and acoustic treatment. So I'm pretty sure you're right in saying soundproofing in this stage, but just to clarify for anyone watching, Acoustic treatment is the treatment, like you can see, temporarily shoved in this room that just stops it being so echoey, whereas soundproofing is trying to stop sound escaping the room so that other people can hear it. So I have looked at some fairly fancy garden offices online. A lot of them come with things like winter insulation and stuff. They're kind of pre-built panels, but I need to speak to those companies, because what I've been looking at is potentially ordering one and then taking out their insulation and putting in my own rock wool, because stuff like rock wool is probably, you know, you've got things like loft insulation, which is fine, but it's not so good at doing audio, you know, it's not so good at insulating sound, but it's good at insulating heat, and it's a lot cheaper, whereas rock wool slabs would be more expensive. So what I might do is try and sort of negotiate the price of the walls that would normally come insulated by the company, and if I can knock a bit of the price off so that they don't put the insulation in, then I can put my own rock wool in. That's probably the best option. Second to that is if I bought, again on the prefab front, if I bought a garden office that's say 6 inches bigger or 12 inches bigger than what I actually need, then I can build second walls inside. So that's another option. And then obviously the other option is building the whole thing myself from the ground up, which I know is going to be the more cost efficient way of doing it, I think, but then you have to juggle, well, I'm going to need a lot of time off work to do it, so is it really cost effective? So yeah, so I'm still juggling all those ideas at the moment, so I haven't really got too deep into soundproofing. In my last studio, unfortunately I wasn't running this vlog when I built that. I kind of wish I was, because I spent a lot of time and energy on getting those walls, because it was an old industrial unit with crap walls, so it was cold in there and echoey and horrible when I first moved in, so I spent a lot of time sort of trying to get, you know, damp proof membranes and stuff like that into it before soundproofing, and then I'd sort of staggered certain sort of, so they were thicker, denser insulation slabs in certain areas, because I knew they were going to be for lower frequency areas. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go that in depth this time, because I'm going to be out in a garden. I'm not attached to any other office or building, and I don't work that loud. That's the other thing. I have to keep reminding myself that, you know, I very rarely have my music that loud when I'm working. You know, I think the loudest I probably ever have it is when I'm either just loving what I'm doing at that moment, and in which case that's just a personal preference, or when I'm in a mix down. I tend to work at stages of volumes, because your ears act as natural compressors, so I'll sort of tweak things fairly loud, and then I'll give it another run through at a really low volume, just to make sure that I'm not overcompensating for stuff. So yeah, so I don't, you know, it's not like I'm spending 12 hours a day cranked up speakers or anything like that, so I'm not overly worried about soundproofing, but it's something that I need to pay attention to closer to the time. But I think that I can't really answer that question fully until I've decided on the final structure, basically, and the foundations are in, so I'll probably get back to that again later. The other question, how are you planning to secure the structure and your gear inside without giving too much away for obvious reasons? Yeah, have you seen Fort Knox? I mean, you know, where I was in the last studio, it was kind of a rough area, a bit run down. There were attempted break-ins to my unit and the rehearsal studio next door to mine. They got broken into, I think, 3 times, 2 of which were 2 nights in a row. So yeah, I'm very aware of these things. In the last place, I had cameras everywhere, because I was in the corner of the industrial estate. I'd blocked off the rear end, so there was no rear entrance, so that was at least secure, because you wouldn't have got in there unless you had a bulldozer. And then the front, I had steel gate entrance on the doors, and also cameras everywhere. I also had motion detectors, temperature sensors, all sorts of things like that. Again, being a bit of a geek, I like all my smart home tech. So yeah, any sort of movement, disturbance, whatever, I got instantly notified, and I was only down the road. I guess similarly with having something in the garden, I'm in the house, so 99% of the time, if I'm not in the garden office, then I'm going to be in the house. So I should imagine it's going to be a similar security system. It'll be cameras, motion detectors, you name it, everywhere. But also I'm going to be 20 foot away, so when I'm getting notified, I can just bolt it straight out there. Other than that, obviously I'll be looking at decent doors, windows. I mean, it's not going to be an unsecure structure. I guess doors, windows, things like that will be the same as a house. They're going to be lockable Yale stuff, so anyone wanting to break into there will need to be able to break into a house, I guess. Also, because of the location of my house and the layout of my house, to get to the garden studio, you'd pretty much need to break into a house on the street to get there. So yeah, so hopefully I won't be too worried about that, but it's always a concern. But I mean, it's a concern, much like when, well, I mean, having the equipment in this house and going away for a couple of weeks. Again, we have alarm systems, and in fact we had a house sitter as well. But even still, it's always on your mind. I'm sure all of you guys watching this, if you go away for a week or two and you're leaving your pride and joy, your synths and whatever it is you've got in your house, and I think that's always a worry. Anyway, moving on. I have some kit in storage, and it's a constant source of stress, wondering if it's all okay and still there. Pretty much exactly what I just said. If it was in a cabin in my garden, I don't think I'd ever sleep. Yeah, so when I'm talking about a cabin, I mean, the cabin's going to be big thick walls, proper, triple glaze doors and windows, and proper locks. It's house locks, so it's not as much as I talk about it being a cabin, it's not going to be like a summer house type cabin, which is just you can just pull planks off the wall and step in or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at pretty sort of high standard stuff, so like I say, and they'd have to get through the house, including me, to get there. Plus, there was some flippant comment along the lines of episode 13 on Friday 13th, in your face superstition. Now I did see that. I did see it come up on my phone when it came through. So yeah, that's weird that disappeared. There was something else, but as the comment seems to have disappeared without trace, that will be forever a mystery to us both. I'm assuming the cannon in question is electronic in nature, yeah, rather than big fuck off piece of artillery. So I'm going to say Canon, high five. Thanks as always for doing this series, and enjoy your holst. Thank you very much. I did. There's a couple of replies here. Imagine you've seen this already. Very basic guide. How to build your own studio. I haven't seen that, but I will open it in a new tab now. Damn, that guy's having the whole thing delivered on a lorry. On reflection, your keyword could have been referring to a book on contrapuntal composition. No, it wasn't. No, not as in Pachelbel's canon. No. Anyway, L7. Hey Dom, what do you think about Brexit? Okay. I think the whole thing is a complete and utter shambles. I think it shouldn't have happened in the first place. I think that those who voted to leave were mostly misled. There are some people out there that I've spoken to who have very valid reasons for leaving the EU. but I don't think that even those valid reasons, I don't think justify for the greater good. So yeah, I voted Remain, even though I mean politically I guess I'm probably considered more of a Marxist than anything, although we're yet to see any form of true communism on planet Earth, because it's never happened yet, and as Marx predicted, we need capitalism to sort of self-implode in order to get real communism, which it looks like that's not quite such a dream anymore. It's almost becoming reality, it feels like, which is very scary, because that means a lot of people lose a lot of things in their life, and I'm not saying I want that. As for Brexit, I mean, it's I guess a sad time. You know, one of the reasons for this road trip I did the last couple of weeks across Europe was to sort of, you know, experience everything Europe has to offer, and it has a lot to offer, from campsites to hotels to mountains to rivers to gorges to beaches to everything, you know, and culture more than anything, and food. Yeah, so I don't want to get too political on this channel, but I'm always happy to answer whatever. So yeah, so that's where I kind of feel about Brexit. As far as having another referendum, I know a lot of people think we should stick to the original outcome of the referendum, but my response to that is always, if you bought a house and your offer was accepted, and the next step is you get a surveyor in to look at the house and check it structurally, and the surveyor says, yeah, everything's tip-top, it's all perfect to a high standard, and then 2 days before your moving in date, it turns out the surveyor lied about everything, and actually it's structurally unsafe, the whole thing's going to collapse any minute now. Would you go ahead with that purchase? Personally, I wouldn't. Personally, I'd go, hang on a minute, I was lied to. I have a right to change my mind and pull out of this deal. I don't see why Brexit should be any different whatsoever. You know, the vast majority of people who voted to leave were lied to through and through, and I think they should be given an opportunity to vote again. So yeah, also the referendum wasn't legally binding, it was only an advisory guide to the government, and it's the government that choose to carry on or not, so it is in their hands. I don't know what they're talking about when they're talking about the will of the people, because, you know, the will of the people, even those who wanted to leave, the will of the people was not this that we currently have or expect to see, especially as it's now looking like it's no deal. So yeah, there we go. Sunset 86. In fact, I'm going to restart the camera now, because I've noticed I'm on 28 minutes already, and I know my camera for some reason doesn't go any further than 30 minutes, so I will see you in a second. Just like that. Sunset 86. Hey Dom, much appreciated answers as always. Hope you have a great holiday. Thank you, I did. Anyway, with regards to you building a cabin for Mix Studio, have you ever checked out In The Mix channel with Brad and Mike? No, I haven't. They built their own purpose-built studio mix room in their garden in Scotland, and even have a video on their channel about what they did. Might be worth a watch. I will look for that, yes. In fact, because every time you guys send me a link or whatever, and I end up then going, obviously once I've recorded this video I shut it all down and move on, and then go to edit and upload. Right, In The Mix, Brad and Mike, let's have a look. So, In The Mix, Brad, Mike. In The Mix. And I'm going to go to playlists, and hopefully it will be there somewhere. So yeah, so I don't forget, it's there. Where were you? there we go. Hopefully you find a way to get what you need. And again, thanks for this AMA series. Canon, high five. As for finding what I need, a lot of it comes down to money as well. You know, the more I'm sort of looking into this, the more I'm realizing, holy shit, that's a lot of money. But it'll be worth it. It just means it's going to take time. There's a reply here as well. Oh, there we go. You've linked the video. I should have maybe looked at that first, but open a new tab. Done. Raphael, love these series. Thank you very much. High five to you. Janice Lokmelis, Canon. High five to you. Juan Carlos Ivancevich, Canon. High five to you. Mad Thorn, Gallic Canon. Double high five to you. And that, my friends, is everything for this week. I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again, and hopefully this time I mean it. I'm thinking what I'll probably do is open up questions to Facebook and Twitter in next week's video, and it kind of means me asking for questions on a, say, Wednesday, to then collect them on a Thursday, to then do the video on a Friday. So it's kind of a bit more involved. So there may or may not be even longer videos next week, but I will definitely be back this time next week, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it and seeing all you guys there. So once again, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far into the video, then you deserve a medal, and to prove that you have made it this far, comment the word ultimate, because that's right in front of me. And I'll see you this time next week. Cheers.